Hi, this is Will Lyle. Welcome to the New York Beat, where we discuss all things jazz and the truth about the most competitive jazz scene in the world, New York City. I started this as an Ask Me Anything concept where my Instagram followers can ask me whatever they want about the New York jazz scene, about what it's like to play jazz in 2025, about the history, about ways to improvise in a more effective way, anything that they want to talk about. And today's topic is a great one because it's something that we all think about all the time, which is how do I make my solos sound more like jazz? And what I want to give you right off the bat is that I don't edit any of this. I don't do, random cuts. I say whatever's on my mind. I have a whiteboard in front of me with some general topics, and you're getting the pure, unfiltered version of my opinions and what I think. So let's jump into the questions. I'm going to pull them up on my phone here. And I really appreciate everyone that wrote in and responded. I'm going to do my best to answer these questions, and sometimes I don't always know the answers. Sometimes my answers are controversial. So we're going to get to all of these right now. Okay. Number one, how to take what you've learned, licks, scales, exercises, and start building your own lines. That's from Zigzag Wanderer. Thank you very much. Number two, how do I make my solos sound more like jazz as a bass player? Thank you, Ethan. Number three, this is kind of a funny one. How do you apply Riz to your improvisation? Another one is how to advice for improving jazz language when soloing. And the other ones are how did you get into bebop arco soloing, and how did you practice to get the proficiency? So this all kind of goes with the same thing, which is how do I make my solos sound more like jazz? And what I want to remind everybody is that jazz as a language is a vast idiom of music. There are several different components to it. A lot of students think that jazz is about playing the coolest thing on a dominant chord, or the coolest lick here, or the most interesting out stuff here. And while that's all great, while different harmony and innovation is great, and it's all, it's all good, there are actually several different components to it, which I will break down, because you can tackle one area, but if the other areas are weak, then you really don't have much to start with for your solo. So let's break it all down here. Number one, I say first and foremost, is syncopation and feeling. Knowing how to play a good swing eighth note. The way I teach a swing eighth note is pretty simple. I start the student with a triplet, and then I tell the student to take the middle triplet out. So the da-da-da, then you're left with da-da, right? Now, that's a kind of a stiff, textbook interpretation of it, but that's not really the whole answer. A real swing note is actually loose, and there are lots of different interpretations about the swing eighth note, but you have to understand the swing eighth note. Even playing something as simple as a scale in swing eighth notes can be challenging, and to really be able to do it effectively with the right feel, the right rhythm, and the right phrasing. So once you're comfortable with how that sounds, then you have to get some books and work on some syncopation exercises. I love Modern Reading Text in 4/4 by Louis Belson. That's a great one. And then I also love Syncopation for the Modern Drummer. Now, of course, you don't have to start by learning jazz out of books, but it just helps you to get the idea of syncopation, knowing the eighth note feel, knowing how the bar line works, etc. These are all things that when you study them at first, it'll help you understand them in practice, and you'll get into more feeling them than even thinking about them. What we always want to do is feel. We don't want to be thinking or too cerebral when we play, because jazz is an ears music. There are people that read sheet music on gigs. But if you're playing a regular, standard gig, bar gig, background gig, a lot of your first early experiences, jam sessions, you're not going to be reading anything ideally. You're going to be playing it all from memory. You're going to be using your ears. And we have to stress that jazz is an ears music. That's where it came from. That ties into the second one, which is melody and harmony. So like all three elements of music, rhythm, melody, and harmony, those are, there are infinite ways to work with them. But I think it's very important for everyone today to have a total, complete mastery of harmony and theory to play. Because yes, there were era players like Stan Getz, the great saxophonist, and Gene Ammons, the great saxophonist, and the great bass player Oscar Pettiford, who allegedly all of them were ears musicians only. They only used their ears, meaning they didn't know, they used their ears to blend in. They didn't know what an F was, like an F major chord. They couldn't tell you what the chords were that they just play. But, there are varying degrees and reports on that. But by and large, 2025 today, all of us know our harmony. We know our scales. So that's knowing what an F major chord sounds like, F major 7th, F minor 6, F minor 7th, diminished, dominant, minor 7 flat 5, knowing about tensions and how they work, the right kind of tensions and extensions to play. That's all super important. Because also when you know about that, that's going to help you break down melodies of songs. You have to know the ways that these different things sound when you actually play them. Not only what they are theoretically, but most of all the sound. The sound and how the melodies lay on top of the chords. And if you want to get started with just these two first components by improvising, just take a melody of any song and then just riff around the melody. You have to know the melodies of the songs, because if you don't know it, your improvisation is not going to be based on anything. You have to know the melodies. The melodies are what's going to direct you in the arc of your solo. I'm going to approach There's No Greater Love different than Bye Bye Blackbird. Why? Because the form's different, the chords are different, the notes are different. But every once in a while, when I'm faced with the major chord, a same lick might end up here, a same lick might end up there. But ideally, the arc of our solo is so strong because of the melody informing it. And one of my bass teachers, the great Victor Bailey, who actually played electric bass, I started on electric bass. He told me that whoever walks in the room should be able to hear what song you're playing without any accompaniment. And even if someone's taking a solo, they should know what the song is without you telling them. They should be able to hear it. An educated listener or a musician should be able to hear that. So those are we started off with syncopation, melodic, and harmonic content. Okay, all very important to understand. So once you train your ears to hear these notes, once you train your ears to hear the transcription and to feel these things and how they sound, that's when you get into transcription. So the transcription part is very, very important. That's how we all get good. Nothing just happens randomly. If you study your favorite artist today, whoever inspires you, if you go back further and further and further and far enough, you'll eventually get to the source. You'll eventually get back to Louis Armstrong and Pops Foster and Earl Father Hines, and even before that with Scott Joplin. You'll get to all of that if you study your idols and figure out who their heroes were and figure out who their heroes are and their heroes. It's like a giant family tree. Jazz is like that, okay? But to put it, I'll make a long story short, the great jazz drummer Ralph Peterson, who was one of my teachers at Berklee, he taught all his drum students to take two musicians from around 1945 to 1965. Now, the reason is that the bebop and swing eras converge at those times, and the language really starts to get solidified, and the mainstream language starts to get solidified. So take two musicians from that era and study everything that they did. Study their discography. Try to learn every record they played on. If you want to use the internet for that, Discogs.com is a great one. You can just click on credits and you can see what everyone has played on. And then finally, you try to learn their solos and sound like them. You do your best to sound exactly like them. And there's a difference between just transcribing one solo and trying to sound like someone, because when you sound like someone, you totally embody everything that they did. So I did that with two bass players starting out. I did that with Paul Chambers on Bass on Top and Whims of Chambers. And then I did that with Ray Brown on Oscar Peterson, Jazz Portrait of Frank Sinatra, and Oscar Peterson, We Get Requests. And I also learned quite a bit of Oscar Peterson plays the Cole Porter songbook. Those albums were all super informative for me when I was coming up, when I was young and I was just graduating Berklee. I spent a lot of time with those albums, and I eventually got to play with some people who actually worked with Paul Chambers and Ray Brown. I have this belief that if you study enough of one specific area of any genre, it doesn't matter if it's folk or if it's jazz, you will eventually come across people that like that same music and operate on that same frequency, and you'll be able to mesh and make music together. That's what's so great. Tonight I have a gig with a pianist named Konrad Paczkuski, and he happens to love Oscar Peterson. I happen to love Ray Brown because it's some of the first stuff that I ever studied. And so when we get together and we make music, it's totally effortless. We know what to do. We know the shouts. We know the songs. We know the melodies. We're able to improvise. We're able to know where the other one is going because we love this kind of that style of music so much. So that's why the transcription and this stylistic mastery is so important. And after you're fixated on maybe one or two musicians, then you can kind of, you learn all their stuff. Then, of course, you can branch out and learn as many or as little of one person, of other people as you want. But I think those first foundational building blocks are really important. And if you learn a whole album of someone's solos, you'll have more than enough info for your improvisation, because they get around Latin music, like Afro-Cuban music. They get around ballads. They get around up-tempos. They get around all that stuff. They figure out how to get around it with their improvisation. So that's going to help you approach all those different kinds of styles of playing too. And you're really going to learn how to play by learning a whole album of songs, and that's going to give you more than enough material to work with improvisationally, whether it's comping or it's soloing. Now, number 4 is ensemble. So the first 3 covered the individual. Now the 4th, we're into the group. And the group is really important in jazz because the group is strengthened by the individual, and hopefully the individual is strengthened by the group. and we have to both have to feed off each other. So a lot of my students would ask me, hey, I don't know what to play. I don't know. I have trouble coming up with things to play. Well, if you really are stuck on what to play, then try to listen to what the other musicians are playing and try to build something off of that. That happens to me all the time when I play. And when I play with more experienced players, they're always riffing off of what I give them. And they're using it as a way to communicate. And it's like a synergistic way of making music. So you have to think about the ensemble, because also when you're playing with 1, 2, 4, 10, 20 other living, breathing human beings. That's going to be different than you playing alone in your practice room. So you have to go with them. You have to match your stuff, make it go with them. So that's what's going to, take your improvisation to the next level, is thinking about the group, thinking about the ensemble. And when you're leading, knowing a shout chorus, knowing part of a record or something where there can be an arrangement in the music that the whole band kind of unifies around. That's why I love playing with older players so much, is because they have so much of those shouts. They have so much of that improv already, as part of their musical makeup. So it's really easy to play with them. And if somebody does the changes to bop kick, which is a rhythm changes, but with the different changes, I know what to do in my bass line. I know how to walk on those changes because I hear them going there. So I go there with them. Okay, so that's ensemble group. Number 5 is style and context. So what you have to remember is that music and any kind of artistic discipline doesn't just come out of nowhere. Okay, all music and art is a reflection of the times that it's made in. So that's why it's really important to study jazz before civil rights, during the civil rights movement, and after the civil rights movement, because the genre evolves and the players obviously evolve and their experiences evolve. And a lot of your favorite players, the majority of the innovation and, I would say like a huge amount of the most important jazz musicians, if not most of them, are African American. And so we have to, embrace the culture. We have to be familiar with the culture and the history of the culture, from its beginnings in the South and to the Great Migration to the other major American cities in the North. To be at least culturally aware, to have it inform what you do, is, I think, very, very important for authentically playing this music and understanding it. Ralph Peterson honestly would talk about that a lot with us, and I think it was great, and I think it was very helpful, because you have to understand what your favorite musicians were going through. And so not forgetting that it's at the end of the day, it's an African American art form, and so we have to embrace that, and we have to have that in our playing, and we have to, that's the way we can respectfully pay homage to it, especially if you don't come from that community. So, and then finally, that has to go with context and style, because if I'm playing in an up tempo, I'm not going to play the same way as I would with a blues singer digging in on a blues, right? If I'm playing with a blues singer digging in on a blues, I'm not going to want to play all my textbook chromatic theoretical stuff. I'm going to want to lay into some music. I'm going to want to match them and try to, even communicate more with less. If you listen to the great bassist Ray Brown play on the album Super Bass with John Clayton and Christian McBride, it's kind of amazing how he plays Blue Monk. He plays it so great. With so few notes, like not using that much chops, even though he has fantastic technique, not always using it. He's able to convey so much with simple phrases. Another case in point is Sometimes I'm Happy, Roy Eldridge. He's able to just convey such amazing music. He actually leaves a lot to the imagination. So that's all about style and context, right? I'm not going to play everything I will the same. I'm gonna take different approaches. So now let's talk about how to actually integrate this into your improvisation. So ideally, you would be transcribing somebody, and you would look at the song that they're playing and look at the phrases that they're playing over each chord, each individual chord. So when they get to the measure of the E flat 7, whatever it is, you take that phrase and you go, okay, what's going on there? And how can I transpose this over different dominant chords? So if the phrase is in E flat 7, how can I play it in D7? How can I play it over a G7? Essentially, you just do that again and again and again. And when you're practicing, when you're going through the tune yourself, every time you get to that E flat 7, when you're playing by yourself and you're playing with backing track, or you're imagining the chord progression, ideally, you play that lick on the E flat 7. Now, obviously, on the bandstand, you wouldn't want to do that. You wouldn't want to just play the same lick every time you got to the same chord. But for the purpose of practicing, for just getting it out of your fingers, I think it's great practice to just do that, because it helps you get ready, and it helps you easily find the phrase, whatever instrument you play. So you take the phrases and you ideally transpose them through the different keys. So Sometimes things are going to sound better in G flat than they do in B flat. Sometimes things are going to sound better in B flat, obviously, than they do in G flat. Sometimes when I'm playing in a C sharp minor, I can use that low E in the bass. It's all about the geography of your instrument, but you want to have the jazz language work out in the geography of your instrument. And that's why it's important to transcribe, memorize the solo. Then when you go along, take it piece by piece and put parts of that solo into your solo. And then when there's a measure that trips you up or there's a measure that you constantly make a mistake on, loop that measure until you get it totally right and that it's seamless. It's not enough to just put on a backing track one time and play thoughtlessly. You have to do it repetitively until it becomes totally seamless, okay? And that's how to get this stuff in your playing. There's really no other way. There's nothing I can tell you. You have to listen to the masters, and then you have to put the music on, or you have to imagine the chord progression. You have to play it yourself and really practice it again and again and again. Now, all this stuff might sound overwhelming to you, but I'm going to leave you with this. Charlie Parker said, forget all the notes and just play. So I have these pointers about how to improve your jazz improvisation, but at the end of the day, you have to be in the moment. You have to be reacting to what's going on you, and you have to be spontaneous. But each time you take a solo, you're going to get better. It's just about repetition, and slowly but surely you will be able to put more and more of these concepts in your solo. And then, in a year, 5 years, 10 years, you'll really start to sound more fluid and you'll be able to play in most situations. So that was it for the New York Beat today. Thank you very much.